Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by NextGen Purpose. EI serves up thoughtful conversations with industry leaders and pioneers who support a regenerative future for our food system. The stories shared by our guests are meant to spark curiosity and inspire informed global change. Good afternoon and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm Justine Reichman, your host. With me today is Steve Freedland, urologist, and he is with Cedars-Sinai. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you, Steve. I'm so glad that we got to coordinate this. I'm excited about what you're doing and introducing you to our community.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
So let's just talk about what you're doing. First, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and talk about what you're doing and the programs that you have started at Cedars-Sinai.
Yeah, no, great.
And I know, before we get going, I know that you're also not just at Cedars-Sinai, you have some other stuff that you're working on. So I'd love for the community to just get to know a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm a urologist. So I specialize in urological diseases, and particularly prostate cancer is my area, and also some benign urology and large prostates. A professor at Cedars-Sinai. I also have a joint appointment at the VA hospital in Durham, North Carolina. I was on faculty at Duke for many years, so left over from there. We have a huge research team there doing some great work, and got very interested in the role of diet and lifestyle, and not something you hear a lot of physicians talking about. And so decided that, look, I think we can actually impact who gets cancer and how bad the cancer is, and how people live with cancer by modifying people's lifestyle. And was very interested in building a team to try and do this. No person's an island. We got to work as a team. And so that was really the motivation for me 8 years ago to move to Cedars-Sinai. And I'm the founding director of the Center for Integrated Research on Cancer and Lifestyle, what we call CIRCLE. And the idea is that we would take epidemiological observations. So we'd study people and basically say, what do you eat? How much exercise are you doing? Figure out who gets cancer, who doesn't. And from there, we can get some clues of, look, if you eat this way or do this, your risk of cancer may be better or worse. And we can generate some hypotheses, some ideas. And then we could take those, actually test them in mice and see if we give them this particular food substance, do they get fewer cancers? They're less aggressive, understand the mechanisms through which these interventions work, and then ultimately bring the ones that look the most interesting back to patients in terms of clinical trials. It's not ready to implement, but we got to do the science, actually do the clinical trial and tell patients, you eat this, let's see what happens. And ultimately from there, you learn and you go back to the epi, and it's a circle. And that was the concept, that it's a full circle. That's why we came up with the name CIRCLE. And we've actually been able to do this in some ways. We've run clinical trials, we've done mouse work, we've done epidemiological work, and still a lot more work to go. But so far it's been fun, it's been interesting, and a lot of hard work, and certainly a lot more work ahead of us.
Wow. Well, that's super interesting. And I love the way you've connected food, because so many doctors aren't talking about the impact of food on whether it's cancer or any health issues. And for us, it's really going to the root of things for us. And so I'm excited to explore this with you and talk about, what it was, that really got you into this originally.
Yeah. So I would say there were two influences, one that drew me into lifestyle and diet, and one that pushed me away, but what I found my way back in. So my dad was actually a big nutrition researcher back in the day. And he's unfortunately passed away now. It's been a while, coming up on 10 years now. But he grew up in an era where it was just understanding basic biochemistry and what turns on enzymes and metabolism and things. And, actually spent a year working with Hans Krebs earlier in his career. I mean, he was a very successful scientist. And so I kind of grew up with nutrition. My older sister's a dietitian and everything. And I said, look, nutrition's kind of interesting, but I don't want anything to do with nutrition. I'm going to go study cancer. because cancer is all about genes, right? There's no lifestyle and diet in cancer. It's all about the genes. So that's what I embarked upon early in my life, was to go study cancer, and went to medical school and residency. And, then in residency, we were looking at some data, trying to, as prostate cancer patients, looking at whose cancer would come back after surgery. What were the risk factors? And, our initial studies were the higher the stage, the higher the grade, the more tumor you had, all predicted whose cancer would come back. Nothing earth shattering, but we played with it and some ways, a little bit interesting ways to look at it. And then someone in the group actually suggested, why don't we look at obesity? And everyone's like, obesity is not going to be linked with, cancer outcomes. That doesn't make any sense. But sure, the data were there. Let's look at it. So it'll be a quick little paper, and then we'll get back to what we were doing. And sure enough, we actually found that obese patients were actually much more likely to have the cancer come back. And that was kind of the first time that I really stopped and said, that's interesting. Why? What is it about being obese? Are there technical issues? It's just harder to operate on obese people? Are we missing the cancers? It's hard to pick up the cancers. Is it something about being obese? Is it something in the diet? Is it an exercise? And it really has prompted, that paper came out, we're on 20 years ago that paper came out. So it's really been a 20-year journey for me to really understand from that initial observations that obese people are doing worse. And our data were replicated by many others, and we subsequently shown their higher risk of dying of prostate cancer and long-term outcomes, to really try to understand what is it that's going on. And one of those paths has really been towards diet and exercise. And so that's how we got to where we are, and the interest started, 20 years ago.
Wow. So now you're coming up to where you are, and you're doing these trials. I heard you mention, and we've discussed a little bit about. And so talk to me a little bit about the trials and what you're putting together and what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah. And so, with clinical trials, you can only ask so many questions, right? So figuring out the ideal way of life, the ideal diet, everybody has different opinions. Do you go vegan? Do you go keto? Do you do whole foods? Do you do this or that? There's only so many that can actually be tested in a reasonable way. And so some of our early work after our findings with obesity led me, and again, pulling on the work of many, many others who've shown this as well, is just the negative impacts of insulin. And in a very simplistic way, insulin is a hormone your body makes when you eat sugar, because sugar is something you ate when there was plentiful calories around, and we're going to store those excess calories to help us get through the winter, so to speak. And that's what insulin does. It drives growth of things in response to sugar intake. And so in a very simplistic sense, I said, what happens if you don't eat sugar? You're not going to make insulin, and that should slow tumor growth. But you obviously have to eat something, right? You can't eat nothing. So the consequence is you're going to be eating a little bit more fat, a little bit more protein. And so that kind of took us down the, 20 years ago was the low carb kind of Atkins-esque diet. I think if we're embarking upon that research world today, and we are starting to make kind of that transition as more of a keto diet. It's in the same zip code, I say. But that's what started us down that path. And we had some nice animal data. And we've now run actually three, we're in our third clinical trial for prostate cancer. They're the Carbohydrate and Prostate Study, CAPS. So we had CAPS 1, CAPS 2. We're about halfway through CAPS 3. And all told, it's been about 100 men or so that we've taken across these studies, randomized them to extreme low carbohydrate, and I do mean extreme, versus kind of eat what you want. And collectively, we're seeing benefits. And, we're seeing lower insulin, we're seeing less side effects from hormones. We saw some evidence that perhaps slowed cancer growth. It's nothing definitive. I'm not here to say that's the only way to eat by any stretch, but it's, we had started down a path and we're starting to expand things now, but that's what we've accomplished to date, and pretty proud of it. It's 10 plus years of clinical trial data for 100 patients. It's a lot of effort to do this. It's not easy work.
What was the most surprising thing that you saw?
I would say, kind of two things. It's a great question. So one is just how difficult these are. You think about this idea that, you have this great idea, you spent years of your life working towards it, and you finally get the funding to do it, which takes years just to get the funding to actually do the study. And then you approach the patient, they're like, yeah, not interested. Not interested. Or, wow, this sounds great. I'm just going to go on the low carb diet. I'm like, no. That's, you have to be like willing to have either one. No. I'm going on the diet you sold me. So it's like this, the challenges and running a clinical trial. I mean, it all sounds great, and there's very good observational data following patients, thousands of patients and different things. But the challenge is, we don't actually know if you make one change in your diet, but not everything else, is that going to make the difference? And so actually testing that, it has been extremely difficult. And I think the other thing that was surprising is, the responses we've seen on the one hand have been much, much more profound than I would have thought. On the other hand, it's not everybody that responds. It's just the heterogeneity of people. So in our studies, for example, we don't tell people to lose weight. We don't tell them to eat less. We just tell them don't eat sugar, don't eat carbohydrates. And on average, for doing this for 6 months, people lose over 20 pounds on average. We've had patients lose 40 pounds by just giving up sugar for 6 months. And again, we don't tell them eat less, lose weight, anything. And so that's been way stronger than I would have expected. But you have some patients that really don't lose tons of weight at all. It's very heterogeneous. With some evidence, women may not lose as much. Our studies have been prostate, so we don't have that, but talking to people who've done breast cancer and other studies. And so there's just a lot, it's easy enough to treat a mouse. They're inbred mouse, they all have the same genetics, they're in a cage, they only get to eat, they don't snack on the side, go run and grab the Snickers bar. It's a very controlled environment. But as you get to the human studies, this is tough work. And the responses can be even greater in some cases, but less in others.
Well, I'm curious, that's the one thing I was going to ask you, is when you're working with humans, and humans can tell you they're doing something, but you don't really actually know, right?
Correct. And that's the challenge. And so the studies, there are studies that will deliver food to patients, right? There's feeding studies and different things. The ideal, if you really want to know the metabolic effects, is you actually bring them in the hospital in 24 hours, and you're feeding them specific foods, and they're not snacking on the side and things. But ultimately, my goal was to figure out something that could work in the real world. And to do that, it has to be scalable, and it has to be something someone can do on their own. If they only can do it when I'm shipping them food, that's not scalable. So we give them great advice. We have phenomenal dietitians. Aubrey Jarman, who's helped us tremendously, is phenomenal. We call the patients weekly for 3 months, and then every other week for the next 3 months. So it's really intensive dietitian counseling. To the degree that's scalable in real life, I don't know. But again, they're choosing their own food. So yeah, we're going by what they tell us they ate, but we are measuring them on the scale. So I don't know. It's not that I don't trust them, but there's no way to verify they're eating what they're telling me. But I do tell you, whatever change they've made, on average, they're losing 20 pounds. So they're doing something.
Right. And it seems like you're seeing an impact. Correct.
And we are. And that's the thing. We can measure tumor markers. We can measure insulin levels. We measure the amount of fat that they have. We've been done DEXA scans and body compositions. And so we can measure. We see metabolic changes pretty much all in the direction that we would have predicted. So again, they are doing something.
And what's the feedback you're getting from the patients that are participating in the study? How are they finding it to participate? Are they finding it difficult? Are they finding it challenging? Do they feel supported? Sorry.
No, it's a great question. And I think in general, I think the patients have really enjoyed it, particularly the ones that have gone on the diet. And in our more recent studies, everybody's getting the diet. They're either getting it now or 6 months from now, because we were concerned that we are increasingly seeing the diet has benefits. Again, not to say this is the only diet that has benefits, but relative to the Western diet, I think it does. And so we want to make sure everyone can benefit, and we don't want to lose patients of, well, I'm just going to go do the diet on my own. We're going to, no, just wait 6 months. We'll do it with you. And so during that period of time, my experience is the patients generally are happy with it. One of the things you get with low carb is you lose a fair amount of weight pretty quickly. And yes, it's water weight, but I mean, you can lose 5 pounds in the first week. And yes, it's water weight. There's some side effects with that. You can get like little flu-like symptoms, maybe get a little bit of a headache and things. But patients very quickly are seeing the effect on the scale. They're weighing themselves, they're seeing that, and they're like, all right, yes, I'm not feeling as great today, but I'm seeing the change. I'm going to stick with it. And I see the patients during the study, and by and large, they're really happy with it. And we have some very, very small numbers, but some suggestion that actually their fatigue levels actually improve. Anecdotally, their cognitive function, their mental acuity, their awareness seems to go up. We don't have quantitative numbers on that. We have published the fatigue data, and again, small numbers. So I think, the first few weeks can be a little rough, but after they get through that, they're feeling better. They have more energy. They're losing weight. So all in all, it's been pretty positive, I would say.
So that's all sounds so positive, and it sounds like you have a lot to look forward to as you continue to roll out these studies. What's the path look like going forward for these studies and for your goals? What are you looking to achieve in the short term and in the long term?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the short term is we're embarking on 2 new studies that I'm really excited about. I'll tell you about in a second. The long term is really to understand the role of lifestyle and where it can play a role in cancer prevention, improvement of symptoms, delaying progression, and I think beyond cancer as well would be the big picture vision. And ultimately, there's been a lot of people looking at this, and I don't think we're there yet, but personalized lifestyle, understanding your genetics, understanding your tumor's genetics, if you have tumor, understanding your disease, understanding your microbiome. Something that's extremely important is just your taste buds. Do you like sugar and you're not going to be able to deal in a keto diet, or you really want meat, you don't want meat? What is your personal taste buds? Because that's going to help dictate the direction to go, and come up with some sort of personalized medicine approach to lifestyle. So that's the big long-term picture. I think that's far, far off in the future, but that would be the big picture vision. But in the short term, we're spending a lot of time. We have 2 new studies that we're embarking upon that I'm really excited. They're really taking the lessons we've learned from those 3 smaller studies and really taking them to the next level. So one of them is actually taking on the low carb world that we've been in, but again, morphing into keto, is working with one of the neuro-oncologists at Cedars, Jethro Hu, another amazing dietitian, LJ Amaral, and the team here is looking at ketogenic diets for patients newly diagnosed with brain tumors. And so this is a disease where median survival is 1.5 years. So half the patients are dead within 2 years. It's a horrible disease, and it's your brain. It's who we are as humans that's being taken over by this tumor. Awful disease. And we, the team, Jethro, LJ, and others, Jillian Gresham's been very involved, ran a phase 1 trial. It took 14 patients, put them on the diet, and, you know, it looked like the survival was twice as long as we would have expected. Small numbers, but we just got notice a few months ago that NCI wants to fund the study and give us a bunch of money. And so we're going to be opening it coming up and probably in the next few weeks, month or two.
Awesome.
At
Congratulations.
multiple
That's a
centers.
big
Thank you.
deal.
No, we're really excited. And there, you know, that to me is probably one of the most impactful studies, if not the most impactful, because we're able to show a benefit and really show that this diet and can improve the quality and quantity of life of these patients. That's changing the field. That's really in one study going to change the field for brain tumor. So I'm really excited about that. A second study we have going on, and again, that's a huge team. It's hard to mention everybody, but we have huge teams doing this type of stuff. The second study is a study looking at fasting mimetic diet. And so this is pulling on Walter Longo's work from USC. So it's basically 5 days a month. You take supplements, super low calorie, and 23 days a month, you know, basically eat kind of healthy, 5 days a month, really starving yourself. And he's shown great metabolic responses, predominantly in breast cancer. So we're doing this in patients with advanced prostate cancer and working with Tanya Dorff and Poway Lin at Duke. Again, we have multiple sites, multiple other people are involved in this. And we're excited to get that going as well. So, you know, really, in both those studies are over 100 people that we're looking to enroll. So taking what we've done to date, 10 years, 100 patients, we're now over the next 5 years going to be looking to triple those numbers that we've enrolled and
Extend
really
lives, triple the numbers. I mean, there's so much. It's exciting.
Correct. And that's the thing. And then, you know, we've tried to look a little bit in breast cancer. I mean, and that's the thing. You can think about every possible cancer and every disease and then every possible diet. And the right diet for prostate cancer might be different if you're newly diagnosed or you got very advanced. And you get into the complexity and how do we study this scientifically? It's daunting. You know, it doesn't leave a lot of time for sleep here.
Well, you got to make sure you eat properly.
Exactly.
My dad, who was I talking to? Somebody said it's like putting gas in the car. It gives you your fuel to go, right?
Exactly. Now you got to eat enough to keep your energy up. But I think just the enthusiasm for asking the scientific questions and changing the field. I think that's what we're really, in the long run, that is our goal, is to change the field and help people live better and longer.
I think so. And I think what you're doing is amazing. And I think the initial studies that you did only are just the beginning. And now where you're heading off is just gonna, you know, it's gonna expand the research, the lives, the conversation for people to begin to be more curious and to have more of an opportunity to better understand the options and make more informed choices and be able to take part of it into their own hands too, because they can take ownership with you as you lead them down the path and as you get more information and you delve into these studies.
No, absolutely. And I think that's really important. I see in cancer patients, you know, in cancer patients, there's a sense of helplessness, right? I mean, you come into the doctor, you sit in the chair and they put the IV in and infuse chemo. Yeah. You undergo radiation therapy. You come in, you lie on the table, they do their CT scans and their radiation. You undergo, you know, lie on the table and we do surgery. The patient is very passive. I mean, they're obviously making the decisions about which therapy to go. Once they decided, it's very much the doctors and the care team doing those interventions. So this is, you know, I tell patients, look, the choices you make 3 times a day when you sit down to eat your meal, you can either choose to take things that are going to fight your cancers or are going to promote the cancer to grow. So 3 times a day, you're going to make the choice whether to fight the cancer or make it grow faster. And then you throw in the exercise. There's so much that is in their control. And at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot that's not in their control. There's bad luck. There's genes that go awry that have nothing to do. You can do everything right and still have genes go awry and things. And that's, you know, so that's what part of it is, understanding which tumors are sensitive to these lifestyle interventions and which aren't. So there's a lot of questions, but it's a partnership with patients. We're very appreciative to the patients who've been on these studies, been a part of our future studies, help support us financially with donations. I mean, there's not pharmaceutical companies that want to fund this research, right? There's not a drug that you can license. And pharmaceutical companies do wonderful work. I'm not here to bash them, but there's no pill or drug. So it's trying to get money from NIH and the National Cancer Institute, foundations, but a lot of it's supported by, private citizens who want to value the work we're doing and want it to continue.
So 10 years ago, when you first got this funding, how challenging was it to be able to go get that funding?
So it was challenging. I mean, so the first studies we embarked upon were actually from the first clinical trial was funded by the Prostate Cancer Foundation, which is a private foundation that raises money from donors. And so it's basically private philanthropy money that we had to go out and compete for. And we had a good idea, but the standard, this brain tumor one, that we're about to launch, to put it in perspective. So we submitted, it took us 3 submissions for NCI to finally, National Cancer Institute, to finally say, yes, this is good, we want to fund it. And the 3rd submission was a year ago, and we're just starting the trial now. So it took us about 2.5 years of multiple tries, multiple submissions, and that was with the phase 1 clinical trial already done and completed. And so it took multiple years, and that was funded by internal funds from Cedars-Sinai that helped support that. So it was multiple years of work and effort to get the data to be able to even apply for one of these grants. And then 2.5 years, lots of work. National Cancer Institute, right now, they're funding 1 out of every 10 grants. So 90% of the grants that get submitted, they say no.
Right.
And so we feel very fortunate to have 2 of these starting at the same time, but it's a long, hard track.
So why do you think they said yes to you?
I think they saw the excitement. They saw the potential. They saw that, look, patients are interested in this. It was interesting. There's actually a way you can search Google to figure out what other people are searching for. It's called Google Trends. So actually figure number 1 in the grant application is Google Trends searches for keto and cancer.
Interesting.
And basically show patients are asking these questions. These are questions we are getting in the clinic. We need to know the answer. And yes, we hope the diet will be good and have all these benefits, but if it doesn't, we need to know that too. And hopefully not, but it's possible this diet is bad. We need to know that as well, because patients are doing this. So I think it was that excitement and enthusiasm that they saw. But still, you need to do solid science. Just a great idea. You need to have the team. And so building the team, asking the right questions, the right ways to analyze the samples and things. And so, the first time we submitted the grant, about half of the grants get what we call triage, not even reviewed. It's not even good enough for them to discuss. You got 3 people who looked over and said, no, not that good. So the second time we submitted, they actually said, all right, this is good enough for at least to discuss. And it was like in the top quartile or so of grants. So obviously not in the top 10%. The third time, and again, we're now like 2 years down the road. By the 3rd time we submitted it, this grant was in the top 3% of all grants submitted to the National Cancer Institute. So there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, but even when you have a great idea, you got a great intervention, you have a great team, these are not easy to do. And that's why it's exciting to now actually be able to launch these trials. We've spent so long talking and planning about it to actually be able to do it. I mean, it's an exciting time. It's a very exciting time.
So for our viewers and our listeners that want to find out more about this, right? Because we have people that are interested in food as medicine and how they can integrate this into their lifestyle. What's the best way for them what are best action steps or ways to get more information on this? And if they want to learn more about what you're doing, how can they follow along?
Yeah, so absolutely. So they can reach out to me. Circle, the Center for Integrated Research in Cancer and Lifestyle, has a website through Cedars. I'm on Twitter, I'm on email, I'm Googleable. I'm very easy to find. So feel free to reach out to me. And I think in terms of just better living, better eating, I mean, the challenge is first off, there's tons and tons of information out there. One. Two, the information doesn't always agree with each other. So you read one article, you read one person, and they're going to disagree with someone else. So that creates a challenge. I think the third is really working with experts. So dietitians out there, nutrition coaches, exercise physiologists, trainers really can work with you, because things need to be personalized. It's very easy to sit and read a recipe and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. But it's interesting. If you go to the word diet and look up the word diet, it's actually from Greek origin. It means a way of life.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is that you're not going to go on a diet. You really need to adjust your way of life, and you need a team. You need support. You need your significant others and your family to be on board as well. It's not easy to change your way of life, but it is possible.
So Steve, when we met in person, you made a comment that I still take with me because I thought it was so smart. And I thought it was a really nice way to present something. And you said it's about making better choices for you. And you used the example about not necessarily, it doesn't always have to be an apple or an orange, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember this example that you told me?
I do.
Okay.
I remember this very clearly. And exactly. And I think the example I gave was actually a patient, no identifying information, but
Right.
we were discussing what snacks he was going to have. And he was asking, is it okay to have like a Ritz cracker?
That's exactly the one you gave me. Yes.
Exactly. And the question, and my question to him, which in hindsight, it was new to me, this way of thinking, but I said, well, if you didn't eat the Ritz, what would you eat instead? And I was hoping he would say, I'd have broccoli, I'd have some nuts, I'd have cauliflower or something, and he's like, well, if I didn't eat the Ritz, I would have an Oreo cookie. So I'm like, eat the Ritz, eat your crackers, and you're right. It's constantly trying to make better choices. Yes, it would be great if we all ate perfectly every time. That's just not reality. It's not the real world. We all have our indiscretions. It's birthdays. It's always a reason to celebrate something. And it's about making better choices. And when you are making a bad choice, to be aware of it. You want the sundae or the piece of cake on your birthday, but don't eat the whole cake. Maybe only eat part of the cake, And so, exactly. It's always about being better.
See, gluten doesn't agree with me, so I eat the icing and I just have a little spoonful.
Yeah.
You see?
So,
Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. It was great to catch up. It was great to learn about what you're doing, all the successes you're having, and I wish you so many more successes. And I only want to keep, in connection with you so that I can continue to follow along and hear what's going on.
Absolutely. And thank you to the listeners as well for, the opportunity to talk to you. We're excited about where the field is going, and we've got a long road ahead, but there's a lot of really good people working on it. So we're excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much. To learn more about these episodes and access show notes, go to nextgenpurpose.com and choose podcast. If you like this episode, head to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform to subscribe and leave us a review. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel to subscribe to our EI videocast and give this episode a like while you're there. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Next Gen Purpose, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Justine_Reichman. Thanks for joining us.